Hello, and welcome to Government. The point of this class is going to be to try to explain what American government is, how it works, how it affects your life, and why you should care. But before we can do that, first we have to address something called intent. Law in America, and really in any country, is very complex. It's very difficult to understand. One reason is because there's so many laws and they don't always work very well together. Another reason is because some of the laws are written in ways that it's very difficult for anybody but trained professionals to understand, which is one of the reasons why you need a lawyer if you're ever in trouble with the law. We'll get into that later. But one of the things these trained professionals do, and you can do this too, when you're trying to understand what a law is trying to say, when it's not as clear as it could be, is to go back and look at the intent, the intentions of those who wrote the law. What were they thinking? What was going on in their lives at the time? What was affecting them? What might have influenced them to write this law? Sometimes that can go a long way to help you understand what that law is trying to say. And understand that government is just a collection of laws. Everything government is and does, there's a law that lets us know that the government can do that or can't do that in some cases. So back to the idea of intent. In order to do that, we have to go back to the beginning. In the beginning, America was not America. What we know as the East Coast of America was actually English colonists, English citizens who had left England for a variety of reasons, whether for adventure, for profit, or because of persecution, because their religious beliefs, although Christian, didn't match the Christian and Catholic beliefs of the countries that they were coming from. And this was a chance for a fresh start for most of the people that came over here. And they got that fresh start because, one, it's really, really far away from England, and two, because England was so busy with a series of wars that would last over 150 years that they kind of ignored what was going on in America. They just weren't that interested. I mean, they knew that there was profit there, but not a lot. And when you've got a war right next door, you kind of have to focus on that first. And that's what they did. Now, during that time, you can imagine this is like kids who are home alone for weeks and weeks and, well, in real terms, 150 years. So they began to set up their own rules that didn't really exist in England. Some of the rules went against rules that were in place in England, but they made them because it met their needs. It accomplished what they needed to accomplish in terms of government. And they began new traditions in the way they set up that government that still affect us today. One of those traditions, is freedom. Freedom of religion and press being the biggest ones. Freedom of religion is the freedom to practice your religion any which way you want. Now, at that time, they were just mostly thinking of Christian religions, but still, they didn't frame it that way. They said you could practice any religion you want. The other freedom that they had was the freedom of the press. That means if you were writing for, say, a newspaper, you could say whatever you wanted about anybody as long as it was true. Now, you couldn't say lies, but you could say negative things, and no one could put you in prison for it. No one could send the military to kill you or steal you in the middle of the night. You were free of consequence if you were just reporting truth, even if that truth was unpopular. The other tradition that was set by colonists at that time was the tradition of representative government. This is the idea that instead of having a king or emperor make decisions and passing laws, instead you'll vote people into power who will make those decisions for you. But if you don't like who you elected, then there will be another election not too far away so you can switch leaders. That means that whoever's in power is only in power because the people allowed it to be. They chose that leader rather than having that leader chosen for them. Now, how this is going to matter is that England isn't going to ignore the colonists forever. Eventually, they would come back, and of course, they're going to want to collect taxes, and they're going to want to enforce British law. But for over 150 years, the colonists had been practicing their own laws, their own forms of government that did not match up very well with England's, and they just didn't want to go back to the old way. And this is what led to the War for Independence and the birth of American government. I'll see you in class, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.